your Florida room?
This is where I don't have to bother the rest of my family. All right. All right. Welcome to the program. Charles Moscowitz here. Thanks for joining me. And we've got Michael Shaw. Michael D. Shaw is a regular of mine. I've known him for years, and he's a health reporter and analyst, published in various publications. Mike, thanks for joining me today.
Well, pleasure to be here. By the way, yes, we've known each other for years, and I have to ask you this. Why do you look the same as you did 20 years ago?
Oh, well, the check's in the mail, right? Uh, now, Mike, you sent me a video that I found interestingly on YouTube only in French and German and not in English, which I think says a lot about
Well,
the
I
content of this
translated
video.
it, so that's it.
Oh, okay. But the video is absolutely compelling and,
Oh, yeah.
and important with regard to putting the COVID-19 pandemic in proper perspective. So let's go right to that. Talk about a bit the background of the virus and how the virus has been presented by whom and why.
Okay. And that's really the crux of it, isn't it? In reading some stuff that actually wasn't in the article I sent you, there are people that think this actually goes back to October 2019. Now, if that's true, then this is more serious than is can be imagined, because there were all sorts of major events in China and in Wuhan at that time. So God knows how many people could have been affected. And it wasn't really until late December, that the Chinese even took any particular note of this thing. So you'll recall that when it first started, the reaction, although Fauci denies it, but the tapes are there. Well, no big deal. It's like the flu. Don't worry about it. Don't wear a mask. And then, of course, it all changed and got into this panic mode. And, there we are today.
Now, I've interviewed Lord Monckton from England, who's
Right.
pretty cutting edge on this subject, and he points out that the WHO sat on this issue for 5 weeks, that being toward the end of December, early January, knowing full well that this was a highly contagious virus. And that even in mid-January, they came out with a statement saying that they did not believe that the virus spread from person to person, which of course is false. Now, his accusation is that the WHO is headed up by an international communist and that it is completely and utterly controlled by the Chinese communists. And in a way, their motivation for covering this up could have been very complex. We have no idea. Maybe they were covering it up the same way the old Soviet Union covered up the Chernobyl accident, which is how I see it. They just lied about it because and it contributed to the collapse of the Soviet Union, because the people of Russia finally had it. I mean, they could see that this was insane and it was a lie and the people were dying, and they just it was the final straw. So the Chinese, being very controlling, wanted to control the narrative. But meanwhile, for 5 weeks, people from China who had been exposed to the virus and who were contagious were traveling all over the world.
That's right.
And so it spread during those 5 weeks. I mean, this to me is the most damning element of this. This is all the proof we ever should need of the terrible danger of any sort of a world government, because people, I mean, I had a guest the other night who says the UN should run a world government. Right? The WHO is part of the UN. If they had a world government, we would have had no, system at all to counter this evil conspiracy to allow a virus to spread.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what you see is, of course, Trump, I guess, pulled us out of WHO eventually. And this was met by almost universally negative comments by people that just blindly support the establishment, presumably because that's all we have. It doesn't seem to matter whether it performs. And by the way, that's exactly the same as the CDC. CDC has been a joke for a long time. In this particular affair, they botched the initial testing. They came up with an absurd definition of what constitutes a death by COVID-19, which inflated these statistics. And finally, Trump has pulled the death statistics compiling away from CDC. But you may recall that back in the 90s, the then director, Julie Gerberding, denied that there was any connection between immigration and the increase in TB and bed bugs. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, what else would have been the source?
Well, I mean, they're obviously completely politicized as a group. Now, there's another thing that was brought up in this video that, and it's what it's called COVID-19 insurrection.
Right.
That I think seems obvious to me on the surface. And that is that in order to inflate the numbers, to keep the public hysterical and to keep the panic alive, and this is all during a time when the big cities, including my own city of Boston, had spent how many millions of dollars building these huge mobile hospitals at the convention center in Worcester and in Boston, which were basically empty the whole time.
That's
They
right.
let in a few homeless people. In the meantime, these governors, and we could say, but certainly Cuomo is known, but also Murphy of New Jersey, Wolf of Pennsylvania, Whitmer of Michigan, and Newsom in California, they changed the law to allow COVID-19 positive people to go into the nursing homes. That's what this video claims. And I think that's documentedly what happened. Why did they do that?
Well, the most dark aspect of that video is that it was 100% intentional, that they wanted to kill these people. I don't know if I'll go quite that far, because there's some saying that goes, and you could probably correct me, never try to explain by conspiracy what could just as well be explained by stupidity.
Mm.
But on that subject, Fauci, I think, ultimately completely discredited himself on an interview. I believe it was Saturday or Sunday on PBS NewsHour, essentially praising Cuomo for the wonderful job he did in handling the COVID situation in New York. And one of the right-wing commentators said, this is sort of like praising the idiot generals in World War I that lost all their troops in certain battles, and then saying the following week the casualties went down.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, again, I'm with you. We don't know if this was a conspiracy, but the stupidity of it is colossal. And I think that any average person would never have done this. Interestingly enough, the head of the health department in Pennsylvania, actually, she took her 93-year-old mother out of a nursing home. So she knew what was going on. And that Cuomo lied about it when asked. He said, oh, well, he tried to blame Trump. And but the fact is that he changed the code, which had previously said not to put people with COVID-19 in nursing homes unless the nursing home was completely set up for it and it was, they would be completely isolated. He changed that to simply a direct order to put them in the nursing homes. So the result of that, regardless of why they did it, was that I don't know how many thousands of people died because of it, but it did inflate the numbers of the disease.
Between 6 and 10,000, supposedly.
Okay, so that was at the height of the virus in April, and it inflated the numbers.
Yes. Now, it's very hard to speculate on why they did it, but why did they do it? Why do something that's stupid intentionally?
So now here we are, and we're once again confronting numbers that are going up in certain states, particularly California and Florida. It seems to me that however it happened, whether it was a lab experiment gone bad, maybe it was a deliberate experiment, I don't know. Nobody knows. Either way, it is a contagious disease. It did seem to have spread as a result of the protest rallies
Yeah.
that included the burning and looting of black neighborhoods around the country, and also young people going out and going to the beach and saying, "Oh, we're fine. We're not going to have this." So now you have an increase in the virus in Florida, California, Texas, and I think Arizona. What's going on right now, Michael, with all of this?
Okay. Well. Notice how the goalposts have changed. But let's start at the end. Okay. You have more cases, and defining a case as a positive test for the virus. All right. But bear in mind that a large percentage of these quote cases are asymptomatic. Um, Moreover, you're going to want a lot of positive people if you're going to ever develop herd immunity. You're not going to develop herd immunity by locking everybody in their home. So the number of positive cases per se is not a big deal. You notice the media is de-emphasizing the fact that the deaths have gone down, even as stupidly as that death statistic is compiled. Most recently, there was some guy that got killed in a motorcycle accident. I forget what state it was, and it was listed as COVID-19 death.
That even made the Drudge Report, which I think has been completely on board with the fear mongering.
Oh yeah,
And the whole way that people are counted, I think that's trickled out from several hospitals who have people have kind of blown the whistle on that. That
right.
anybody who died of other causes, but they might have had the virus, it's listed as COVID-19.
That's
People
correct.
who have, without any kind of examination, where there's questions about the death certificate says COVID-19, and that the hospitals may have some kind of a financial incentive to do that.
They get $13,000 more from Medicare if it's an approved case. Well, if it's a case that they listed as that. So the politics of this thing have been ridiculous, and um, it's a very sad combination of people that are married to the system that aren't necessarily uh, anti-Trump per se, but then if you combine that with the way to take down Trump, um, but I'll tell you what, people are scared. Uh, Fortunately, my gym opened up a couple of weeks ago in Virginia. Okay, it started out with, uh, maintain the social distancing and so on. Then after a few days, it was, well, you're going to have to wear a mask when you check in. Okay. Then it changed to, you're going to have to wear a mask when you check out because that's a choke point. Yeah, wishful thinking. Uh, Forget 6 feet, you could maintain 60 feet the way the gym is still empty. I mean, I feel bad for them. I understand. Now it's become you have to wear a mask all the time, except when you're exercising if you really don't want to. So, case in point, um, because the center that this gym is in, I guess, is not doing any business, they've shut off the escalators. All right, and I consider it. Look, if I'm going to go to a health club, I'm going to walk up the stairs. Okay, it's 44 steps. So I get a little winded at the end of that. So I'd rather not have a mask on. So anyway, the guy was waiting outside to take my temperature, which is some sort of definitive. But of course, as a sidebar, when you take a temperature with one of these forehead things, it's going to be 1 to 1.5 degrees lower than your actual body temperature. So it's very seldom that someone even reads 97, but never mind it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trudging up the stairs. And the guy said, Mike, where's your mask? Well, wait a minute. I'm not even inside yet. Let me put the mask on before I go inside. So, but they're under a lot of pressure. They don't want to get closed. And my son in California, they opened the gym up for him and then closed it a week later. as you
Right.
know. So,
Hmm. And there's a lot of talk about, of course, the children going back to school, and it's become somewhat of a political football in that people who want to keep everything completely shut down. It's kind of like, in a way, the height of the virus when you had really draconian, extreme oriented laws by certain blue state governors, if I may, to now they
thank
want
you.
to keep everything shut down as long as possible. And to my, I mean, is that, is it, do you think that schools should go back? I mean, and if they do go back, it's going to be like going through some kind of a crazy quilt maze. I mean, with kids having to
Yeah.
keep their desks separate and put on masks, and they can only talk to you this time and not that time, and you can't go to the cafeteria, and you only can walk here but not there, and it's like, it seems, is it necessary? What is the best approach?
Okay. Well, first of all, on yesterday on MSDNC, they were interviewing all these experts, pediatrician, others, and every single one of them said it was better that kids go back to school. And of course, you can imagine the reaction of the host was just mortified. So, uh, in Virginia, well, not in Fairfax County, where my wife is a teacher, they are giving parents the option of whether they want virtual or in-person education. And they put an interesting clause in. It's like, okay, this is a decision you're making for the year. Okay. And my wife's a special ed teacher. She's going back to the classroom in the fall. And what they didn't make clear to the parents, I guess, is that she's not going to be the virtual teacher. She's going to be the in-class teacher. So a lot of the parents like her, and they were really, really upset to find that out. But what do they expect? What, you're going to say, hello there, TV audience, and you kids right in the, I mean, they're separating it. They're trying to do their best. In California, as you may know, a couple of the districts, including Orange County, wanted to reopen. And then Governor Newsom overrode all that and said, no, none of them are going to open. And there's a lot of people who are upset. Kids
And also, there's a political side to it in California, in that I believe the teachers union, they've said, well, we're not going to reopen unless you defund the police and
Yeah.
and end charter schools, right?
Yeah, well,
I mean, so it obviously has nothing to do with COVID-19 for them. It's just it's a political hatchet.
well, the official position of the NEA, which every teacher has to join, is that you can't go back to school until there's a vaccine. But consider this: if they ever develop a vaccine for this virus, which is going to be very difficult, it can't be a conventional vaccine. I'll tell you why. There's a number of, actually, an article just came out yesterday, not about a vaccine, but looking at people that have had COVID, and then they monitored the antibodies. They found that basically after 65 days, only 16% of the people had antibodies. So a conventional vaccine isn't going to work. Now, there's non-conventional vaccines where you're doing something weird to the outer shell of the virus itself to prevent it from entering the cell, that has nothing to do with a typical immune response. But as I tell people, you're not going to be able to do a Jonas Salk type vaccine like that. It's not going to work. There's never been a vaccine for any coronavirus for this exact reason. That's why there's not a vaccine against the common cold, which are mostly coronaviruses.
Mm-hmm.
You develop immunity, it goes away. The only hope, ironically, is if you're going to have a conventional virus, you have immunity for 2 months, which should be enough time to develop herd immunity, assuming you're not locking people up. So everything you're doing is wrong.
So, in other words, there really is not going to be, based on your research, Michael Shaw, there will not be an effective vaccine, and that
Okay.
the only solution seems to be herd immunity. Now, How has that worked in, for example, Sweden, which did not do the lockdown? I've heard that Sweden has a higher death rate than Germany, which did do the lockdown. At least that's been what the official media has told us.
Well, you got to watch statistics. Um, I think what they did was they cherry picked, ironically, like was done on the cholesterol and high fat diet studies. You pick the countries that it fits your hypothesis. There are some that did better than Sweden, which Germany is one of them. There are countries that were very big on lockdown, like Belgium, that have one of the worst death rates in the world. So there's obviously something else going on here besides what country you're in. If you go to South Dakota, they didn't do any lockdown, and they have one of the lowest death rates in the country. So there's clearly some other factors missing here. And, you talk about the increase in Texas and Florida and Arizona. Well, on their worst day, they weren't anywhere near what New York was with the deaths there. So there's many factors, but overall, this idea, which believe it or not was public health policy, of quarantining the healthy and ignoring the vulnerable is what made it as bad as it is. And it should be an indictment of these overblown academics who are in charge of this. And I have to tell you something, because I've seen this my whole career. If you take an MD, the further you get an MD away from treating patients, the more useless they are. Tony Fauci is a prime example. He hasn't seen a patient since 1968. If you go on the website for his institute, his biography is embarrassing. I've never seen anything like it. It's basically, he's the greatest guy in the world. He's the greatest scientist in the world. And this is the one that I like. He's the 41st most cited researcher in all science. Well, when you're head of an institute for 36 years, your name is going to be on a lot of papers.
Right. I mean, did he actually do any research himself? And, were those sightings medical, or were they more policy and political? I mean, he seems to be more of a bureaucratic figure than somebody who's actually out in the trenches doing science. Which brings me to my next question, Michael.
Sure.
Japan has had a very, very low rate of virus and very few deaths. Taiwan has only had 7 deaths in a population of, I think, 30 million people.
Right.
Singapore. And these countries have not done anything like a lockdown, which, by the way, South Korea did do and apparently did it successfully. But nevertheless, the reason, what I've heard, I mean, from reports I've heard, they're using legacy drugs as prophylactics, not just hydroxychloroquine, but several others as well. These are drugs that have been around for decades. They've been vetted, they've been approved. They're basically safe. They're certainly as safe, if not more safe, than any other drug on the market.
Right.
As we know, all drugs have various side effects that you have to watch for. And so I think that their success has been credited with the use of these drugs. Do you know anything about that? And if so, why aren't we doing it?
Okay, well, an interesting question. That's largely true, what you're saying. And if you want to point to one of the few good things WHO does, is they have what's called a list of essential medicines, as you know. And these are medicines that are tried and true. I think it's about 300 medicines that the idea is, even if you're a 10th world country, you have to have these, because these are the good ones. Okay. So there's a tendency in the United States to throw out the old stuff and to come up with new expensive proprietary meds. So it would be against the grain to say, with this horrible new disease, well, just use hydroxychloroquine. That would be like, bathing in the Jordan River to cure your whatever.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I think they took a more proactive approach. They also have a much more homogeneous society in these countries you mentioned. Everything isn't racism in those countries. So they didn't have the built-in politics. And it must be said, they didn't have an active media cheering for 1 million deaths to try to unseat Trump. And if you throw all that together, it kind of explains it.
So I guess, Michael, where are we going now from here? I think that, I say it somewhat facetiously, but I think that if Trump loses the election, the virus will be over the next day.
That's
but
exactly true. People said, when is this going to end? And I tell them November 3rd.
Yeah, exactly. And if he's elected and reelected, we're going to never hear the end of it for another 4 years. But putting that aside, where are we going at this point? Do you think that the contagion? I've heard that the virus itself is mutating in a way that indicates that it's weakening, that it's not the death sentence that it was to a number of people.
Right.
That it's moving in the direction of being just more like a terrible flu. Is that true? And is that where we're going to be going with this?
Yeah. If you want to be a successful virus, you don't want to kill the host. Right. So it's very typical for viruses to start off wherever they start off and then decline into something that's far less severe. That's overwhelmingly the case.
Sure.
And bear in mind, by the way, that any virus that's pathogenic to humans originally came from another species. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that most viruses are not pathogenic to humans. There are some, and as I tell people when they're worried about, look at all these positive results coming out. There's a virus called human herpes virus 6, HHV6, which is positive in 100% of humans. And if you go to the HHV6 Foundation website, you're going to see a list of diseases that are a whole hell of a lot more serious than COVID-19 that are caused by this. The little brother of HHV6 is HHV4. You may know it as Epstein-Barr. And this virus is only in about 95% of humans. It causes, as you probably know from your college days, infectious mononucleosis, but it also causes various forms of cancer. And everybody has it. Okay. So what's going to happen, I believe, is the virus is going to get less serious. People will stop talking about it. As, by the way, they stopped talking about AIDS. Whatever happened to AIDS? There's no vaccine. There's people that still get it.
I think that they developed a cocktail of drugs that allow people to live with AIDS. So it's no longer this death sentence that it was. And in fact, I had a guest of mine say to me, and this is nothing, I am in no way endorsing this.
Okay.
But he was taking one of these drugs called PrEP, P-R-E-P.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that it has absolute immunity from coronavirus. I have no idea. It's a legacy drug. I don't know that. But I guess that getting back to the topic here, it's going to become something that we will develop an immunity to, like we have to all of these other things. Is there anything, Michael, that we can do, and I'm asking you as a medical journalist, to improve our immune system? Are there things, habits, foods, drugs, whatever? I'll admit, I'm always looking for a magic supplement or something. My daughter has criticized me for this. But is there anything that we can do to improve our overall immune system so that if we do get this thing, God forbid, and by the way, people be careful, and I am, then we will be more likely to sort of be able to just get through it and then, not have it be devastating.
The closest thing to a miracle drug for the immune system is vitamin D. And I personally take 10,000 units a day.
Okay.
And, they try to raise this fear that it's dangerous at some levels, but then they did study and people were taking 100,000 units a day and they didn't do it. So, zinc is a very good prophylactic. And, beyond that, common sense, while you're not going to French kiss someone that has COVID-19, if you maintain proper precautions and common sense, that goes a long way. I mean, when I got mono at the end of undergraduate, I wasn't doing any common sense, and it swept through a particular dormitory that I didn't even live in, but I had a girlfriend that lived, so I was there all the time. And people in close proximity, and do the math.
Okay, and as you say, good common sense. Maintain. I think there are some basics we can learn from this. Maintaining, clean hands, hygiene, not going into tight quarters with people.
Right.
I mean, I generally
New York subway system.
Yeah, I mean, I actually support that. I mean, I've never liked crowds anyway, but I know that some people have to, and if you do have to, maybe wear a mask or maybe try to be careful. And I would also say, and I've heard this said actually by President Trump, that a little direct sunlight is healthy. Not too much,
Yeah.
maybe a half an hour a day.
Yeah, vitamin D.
Yeah, that's right. And especially if you live in my part of the country, up in Boston, there's a vitamin D deficiency. Most people have it.
Right.
And so you need to get out and get some sunshine in your face every day.
And if you can't, you can supplement it. It's cheap.
Okay. So, Michael, what else do you have coming up on your radar right now?
Oh boy. I mean, I try to write a different column every week, and there's been a bunch on COVID. I think I sent you that thing on excited delirium, which is a pretty controversial subject that we can talk about someday.
Yes.
But this has been kind of a dominant subject matter, and then with my day job, there's interesting stuff going on in that field. But yeah, this is the number one sort of big health issue now, and maybe people start learning about viruses. They're very interesting, and they're scary. And I'll just leave you this one question. All right,
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that dangerous viruses come from when they jump species, why poke the bear? Why screw around with bats?
It's insane.
Even if it's completely, what word am I looking for? Genuine and innocent.
Are they still doing it?
Well, we gave, I think, $4 million to this Wuhan Institute to do it. I mean, and the supposed reason was, well, we want to know why bats have all these viruses and don't get sick. Well, because they're bat viruses and you don't get sick on your own viruses. There, just solve it. Give me the $4 million.
Yeah, really. You would have taken only $1 million to tell them that.
Okay, but here's the thing. Why?
I'll take $100,000 to tell you that. Yeah. Anyway, but and Lord Monckton said on this program, and he's sort of an expert on China. He said that these bat caves in China have more bats in them than the whole population of the Earth. I mean, we're talking about a real problem there, and it's one that you don't poke around with, as you say.
Yeah. I mean, you're just, even if it wasn't engineered, which I think it was, why mess with it? What good is going to come with that? Because all these viruses that came from China, the Hong Kong flu and the Asian flu and the Black Plague, well, that's not a virus, but it's because they live in very close proximity with animals, all these bird flus. So why mess with it? Why make it worse?
It's very bad science. Anyway, Michael, where can people read your articles?
Okay, they're always on healthnewsdigest.com. I mirror all of them going back to, I think, 2004, believe it or not, on my own website, gasdetection.com, and a few other places. But as always, it's great to talk to you. And I see you in your Florida room there. Why you
Yeah,
have
right.
a Florida room in New England, I don't know.
Because I'm trying to keep separate from my family and not disturb them, basically.
Okay.
All right, Michael, listen, again, thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. So